Oh, intelligent television? That's what it means?
Yeah.
That's what it's meant this whole time?
Welcome to Tech Tales. I'm Corbin Davenport,
And I'm Evan Hirsh.
and today we are talking about the Intellivision Amico, which was a weird, kind of crowd-funded retro console for kids that just went completely wrong.
Yeah, I heard about this only in passing from just a bunch of YouTube videos I watched and just online internet drama, but I'm really excited to dig deeper into it to see what other things I could have missed.
So, before we get to the modern console that sort of went uh it didn't go well.
No.
We're going to talk about the original Intellivision first and sort of how we got to this point. So, the original Intellivision was a home video game console created by Mattel Electronics and released in 1979. So, this was in the second generation of game consoles, along with the Fairchild Channel F, the Atari 2600, the Odyssey 2, and the ColecoVision.
Mhm.
So, very early, barely a video game at this point. Um, the Intellivision used a custom 16-bit processor paired with 1 kilobyte of RAM. Watch out. And it generally had better graphics than the Atari 2600, and it used a couple different tricks to sort of do that. Part of that was actually kind of cool for the time. It had a lot of the common code and libraries for games on an internal like flash ROM.
Mhm.
So games didn't necessarily have to like you could fit a game on the Intellivision into like 2 kilobytes or something that might take like four on another console. Now, the downside of stuff like that is that most of the games ran at like 20 hertz instead of like the 60 and you'd get from the Atari or other consoles. But, they tried. They did what they could.
That's pretty cool. I actually didn't know that. I didn't even realize that. So, like, I guess the modern analog would kind of be like almost a game console, including parts of an engine or graphics library, like inside the console itself, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was like kind of very early, not like operating system, but like kind of some shared code. Yeah.
Hmm.
The Intellivision was unique primarily for two different reasons. Number one was the controller, which it used two controllers that kind of like slotted into the console when you weren't using them, and each controller had it like a knob
Hmm.
and a 12 button numeric keypad.
Right. Yeah, the
Um,
classic phone controller. I've heard of this.
yeah, yeah. It looked really weird, and it also did the thing that some other like PC games did, where the games would come with like overlays that you like slide on top of the buttons that would kind of tell you what each button does. And the other unique thing that this console is kind of known for is kind of like innovative advertising. Like one of the things that this console was known for was there would be a lot of ads where someone representing like Intellivision would sort of pit the console directly against like the Atari 2600, and they show like both versions of a similar game on like a TV ad and be like, look, you can literally see the difference. You should buy Intellivision.
I think that became, I'm not sure if that was the first one, but it definitely became a common practice afterwards, right? Like there were many
Yeah,
ads
yeah.
from Nintendo and Sega, specifically I think Sega during the Super Nintendo Genesis era, where Sega constantly did this, like touting made up things like blast processing, right? But like
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was happening so far back.
So here I've got a TV ad for the Intellivision.
I'm ready to go.
Okay, three, two, one, go.
Hills presents Intellivision, intelligent television by Mattel. More sophisticated than any video game that has come before, providing hours of entertainment for the entire family. Intellivision, with one of the clearest game displays available today. Find this system, plus a complete line of sports and video game cassettes at Hills, where our game is low prices every day.
Look at that football game. It almost looks like football.
It's true. I mean, to me, as someone who doesn't watch much football, it's probably more
Yeah.
understandable.
Yeah, I'd see this in the other room and go, "Yep, that looks like football.
Yep, yep.
Go team."
Yeah, exactly. No, that's pretty cool. I mean, I think one thing that's interesting is that I have not really looked too much at video game consoles and video game history before before the crash of the late 80s, but I assume we're going to get to that later with it in television, etc.
Yeah. And so Mattel released that. It was doing pretty well. They eventually released a redesign called the Intellivision 2,
Hmm.
which had a smaller size and it combined some of the chips to bring down the manufacturing price. So this wasn't like a graphical upgrade or anything. It was just like, we need to make this cheaper.
Right.
And there were projects to create a successor console, but the video game crashed in 1983,
Hmm.
put those plans to a halt. And former Mattel Electronics Senior Vice President of Marketing, which was Terrence Valesky, bought the rights to Intellivision. So Mattel was like, we don't want to do this anymore. And Valesky comes in and buys the rights. He created a company called INTV Corp, which continued to sell the console as a budget device throughout the 1980s. I think they finally stopped selling it in 1990.
Hmm.
So technically, this was on the market for a long time. I couldn't find like good numbers, but it seems like the vast majority of sales happened while it was still under Mattel. So they didn't really sell a whole lot after that point. After 1990, this INTV company declared bankruptcy. And then in 1997, Terrence Valesky sold the rights to Intellivision to Ultimate Corp, which was a special effects studio. That same year, two people, Keith Robinson and Stephen Roney, licensed the Intellivision brand and games from Ultimate Corp. Robinson and Roney previously worked on Intellivision games at Mattel, back when the console was still selling, and they formed a new company called Intellivision Productions. But they collaborated with other retro enthusiasts to create emulators for the Intellivision. And they started dumping the ROMs for a lot of the games and publishing them for free online. So that's pretty cool. In 1999, this company, Intellivision Productions, published a compilation of 50 games called Intellivision Lives, which
Hmm.
was sold for mail order for Mac and PC.
Okay.
This was a collection of playable games as well as developer interviews, old television commercials, and staff credits that were never included in the original games. And that collection was eventually ported to the Xbox, PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Nintendo DS. That's a good example of like actual like video game preservation that we don't see a whole lot. Like these two guys who worked on the original television getting the rights back and just releasing the games in as many formats as they can. That's pretty cool.
No, that's nice. I think we're starting to see some of it. That's similar to I think Atari did that recently with Atari 50. Um, yeah, but it's very cool that they were doing that honestly so close to kind of the Intellivision and all of this happening, right? Like often this will happen like 40, 50 years later, but this happened almost immediately.
Yeah, and from like people involved in the original console.
That's pretty cool.
Unfortunately, Keith Robinson died in 2017,
Hmm.
and his share in Intellivision Productions was purchased by Tommy Tallarico.
Ah, yes.
And this is the guy best known for creating the video games Live Orchestra, and before that, he ran a game music studio called Tommy Tallarico Studios,
That's right.
which worked on a bunch of different games, and especially the '90s. Um, Later on, he credited the original Intellivision for getting him interested in video games in the first place. I
Mhm.
don't know if that's revisionist history or not. There's a lot of that happens here. Um,
I'm not shocked by this. No.
Tommy rebranded the company to Intellivision Entertainment,
Hmm.
with Stephen Roney staying on as a chairman and bringing back some other Intellivision developers to the company. Um, I got a big quote from Tommy here. He said, quote, The Intellivision was always my favorite system because the games were cutting edge, yet fun and simple to play, so our entire family could enjoy them together. I find those important elements to generally be lacking from our industry with the current modern gaming consoles. Our goal is to change that by focusing on bringing all age groups and levels of gamers and non-gamers together, while introducing new generations of people to the legacy success of the Intellivision brand. I want to bring gaming back into the families and to non-gamers. If hardcore gamers think that is stupid, lame, and dumb, that's okay. I'm not going to trick them into something it's not. Quote.
Honestly, my first thought, and I didn't follow the Amico at the beginning, but my first thought when I kind of heard of what Tommy was trying to do without really knowing him was like, you know what? This doesn't seem that terrible, right? Like honestly,
No.
the kind of I love retro games. I have a bunch of them. I collect them, and like to some extent, I empathize because the types of games being made these days is different, and it's different and it's for a different audience. So him trying to like do something actually different and building Intellivision to kind of like go back to the games, etc., of his childhood. As someone who just loves gaming in general, I empathize with that.
Yeah, it's not a bad take. There's probably an audience for something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and now, importantly, when that happened, there wasn't actually a console announced yet. That's where like
Yeah.
everyone assumed what happened, but it took a little bit later, and then in October 2018, this
Yeah.
company announces its new console, which is the Intellivision Amico.
Right.
So now we're gonna watch a trailer for that.
All right.
All right, hit play on 3, 2, 1, go.
Intellivision is bringing families back together again with an innovative gaming console called Amico. 40 years ago, video games burst onto the scene as families connected gaming consoles to their television sets and enjoyed playing simple games together. It didn't take long for video games to grow into a multi-billion-dollar industry as the digital play from companies such as Atari, Coleco, and Intellivision became an integral part of childhood culture. But by the mid-90s, the video game industry took a turn. Easy-to-play games became sophisticated, controllers became complicated, and consoles became expensive. Sadly, family play was replaced by solo play, and rooms full of laughter were replaced by insulating headsets. But all of that is about to change with the arrival of Amico. Just like the original Intellivision, which pioneered couch co-op and family gaming, Amico, the Italian word for friend, promises to bring back family-friendly entertainment with the sole purpose of ease, togetherness, and fun. All Amico games are family-friendly, and they contain no violence or any foul language. Families will enjoy gathering together with Amico and jumping right into fun-filled gameplay. The controllers are easy to learn, no matter what your skill level, and they've been designed to adapt difficulty for diverse skill ranges. Amico will take your family back to the days when setting up and playing video games didn't require a large investment of time, but yielded a ton of fun and laughs. Amico isn't just simple, it's affordable too. Buying a new video game system typically means expensive games and overpriced accessories, but not with Amico. The system comes with 6 built-in games and 2 wireless controllers with easy-to-use color touchscreens and a simple positional disc for endless hours of entertainment with your friends or family. Gameplay supports up to 8 players. And if you don't have a controller, you still join in on the fun by downloading the free Amico app on your smart device. And Amico is for everyone. Just take a look at some of these games. The growing library includes motion-controlled sports games, party games, action arcade games, children's edutainment, and even beloved classic retro games that many parents grew up with and loved. And of course, they have been totally reimagined for today. Today's Amico is being led by an experienced team of game industry professionals who have worked on some of the most popular and biggest selling video game franchises of all time. These noted industry veterans bring decades of experience to Intellivision, and they have built a team of more than 60 people with the global presence as support. Intellivision Entertainment has already raised $17 million for the development of Amico, thanks to financial backing from investors and more than 5,000 individuals. Join us as we bring families back together again. Whether you are a parent, grandparent, young, or simply young at heart, make everlasting memories with the newest member of your family. Amico from Intellivision Entertainment.
All right, give me your thoughts.
All right. So, my thoughts on that. I have a couple do you want thoughts or do you want jokes? I've got like 4 queued up
Oh,
jokes.
go for anything.
Okay. A couple things. 1, told you the Wii U wasn't a bad idea. 2, told you the Ouya wasn't a bad idea. 3, told you the Vita wasn't a bad idea. But like the actual thing, and I think I remember seeing this in some article around the time of its announcement, right? And then I just kind of brushed it off, right? And because, it's a tech product and I follow those. But my first thought was, hey, this is a cute idea. I think now that I've kind of got the context of the original Intellivision, I can see what they were going for, right? Because so the original Intellivision, it has a controller that has about 12, correct me if I'm wrong, buttons that are numbers. And then you essentially put a sort of a cover over those or a screen over those depending on the game you're playing to change what the buttons do, and like you can see what they do based on the game.
Right.
And then there's like a small little like essentially old iPod Gen 1 like wheel that you turn back and forth. This new Amico comes with 2 controllers, but essentially you get to replace that like those 12 buttons with a touch screen, which is like a pretty good idea actually, because, or at least when I say good idea, it very much is trying to continue what the original Intellivision's going for, right? Where it's just like those 12 buttons like change depending on the game that you're playing, etc.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and often things like the Wii U, which obviously is a pretty famous failure from Nintendo, um, we're trying to, push to that younger audience by utilizing touch, which is a thing that very famously the younger generation is growing up with as like their primary input method for computing devices. This is a concept and an idea, like a cheap, affordable, cheap, affordable, like video game console that exists to primarily target families with like primarily family entertainment is like not a bad idea at all. But previous failures in like the home console space, like trying to break that whole, uh, multiple console or the trying to break into that market, it's like it's tough. You saw the Ouya and stuff like that, and it just kind of flopped. So having also a niche to pivot this thing towards, where it's like very, very much like early childhood, family play, a space that Nintendo didn't exactly leave, but they've kind of left open, isn't a terrible idea.
I like the design of the console. It's like it's sort of just like a box, but the controllers sort of sit in it like a charging dock. I think originally they said this was going to use Qi charging for the controllers, but then they switched to like charging pins because that I'm sure worked better.
It worked better, and it's probably cheaper too. I would have made the same
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah, and the controllers the controllers do kind of look like iPods actually. That's a good
Yeah.
point, but like with a taller screen, and the circle wheel is more of a button. And also in this video that's kind of cool is in some of the games they're like holding it like you would hold an iPod, sort of in portrait mode, and then in other games they're holding it sideways. So it is kind of also like the thing I thought about in that ad when they're holding it sideways, like, oh, it's like a Wii controller,
Yeah,
right?
Wii remote, exactly.
So it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that works.
Yeah, the Wii remote famously, for those who don't know, is, it didn't exactly revolutionize the world of video game controllers, but I consider it one of the smartest controllers ever made. It is essentially a remote with a D-pad on it, with three buttons on the face that are like used for games, and then a trigger on the back. And famously, you can hold it like a television remote where you're pointing it at the TV, or you can turn it on its side, and it fundamentally becomes a NES controller with the amount of buttons that it has. And you can see that's what they're doing in with the same thing with the Amico, although admittedly it has far less buttons. It actually has, I don't think, any real buttons. It basically just has that little wheel and then the touch screen. But
Yeah, and it has some buttons like on the side where like when you're
yeah,
holding it sideways they'd be like triggers, but
that's probably enough. And then you could probably have just very brightly colored one or two things on the touch screen for like various actions. Like I think in this scenario it could still work, right? Because the games don't really look very intense. Um, so it's probably fine.
yeah, and it was also kind of interesting this touchscreen on the controller. Part of it that they're showing in this ad is some of the games are using that as a second screen,
Hmm.
and then some of them are using it for extra controls. But then they also kind of showed how you might be able to play games entirely on the
Mm.
touchscreen. So in that point, it's more like the Sega Dreamcast, right, where it had like the
Yeah.
like modules in the controller you could take out and sort of had like very basic games on them.
Yes, the virtual
So
memory units. Those actually in the Dreamcast, those are actually the memory cards. Back when that was like a
yeah,
thing during early disc-based systems like the PlayStation 1, GameCube, etc. Like they had to put the storage somewhere and they put them on these little memory cards in the controller and Sega famously decided like, "Hey, let's just, throw a little cheap LCD screen on it so people can, put chow from their chow garden and like take it on the go." Obviously, that system didn't really, light the world on fire. It was also canceled after 3 years.
yeah. But yeah, like definitely like a lot of good ideas going on here. Again, if the execution worked out, which we now know it didn't. I do agree there probably is a market for this because when I think of like first of all, like the mainstream game consoles, they don't have a lot of family content. It is there. Like I did play uh Peppa Pig on my Xbox Series X because it had like 5 achievements.
Yeah,
And I got that done real quick.
I
Uh
I keep seeing that
yeah.
on mine too. I mean, it's on Game Pass, man. You got to get
It
that.
is like that's how I play. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I'll play Peppa Pig. I don't have to buy it, sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there's not a lot of options there. Nintendo is definitely the winner here, but with Nintendo, they actually don't have a ton of games at this point that are fun on a single shared TV screen.
Right.
Stuff like Mario Party is fine, like that's what it's actually built for. But even when you go to like Mario Kart, like it's not fun having the screen divided into like four squares and everyone has to look at their little
Mm.
square.
I would say there's like one or two. I'd say some of the Mario games are. The upcoming Mario Wonder is. On the whole, things have kind of moved mostly towards split screen or single player.
Yeah, and definitely part of the advertising for this is that it's also more affordable. Like
Yeah.
if I'm like a family and I'm getting a Switch and I want to play Mario Party, I'm buying the Switch, which is going to be like $300. I'm buying Mario Party, which is going to be like 60, and then I need like two more Joy Cons because the thing only comes with two, so that's another
Right.
like $80 or something. So that does add up. So
Yeah.
if there is like probably a market here somewhere, but
I would also like to point out, I think something we didn't really note from the trailer is the trailer obviously showcased families, right? And those children in in the trailer, like none of them were over 10 years old. That type of thing, obviously, I mean, if your killer app is like Sesame Street, you're not exactly trying to target the tweens here. So, I don't know, but like that I think is also something to note because Nintendo, I would say, very much is geared towards family friendly. But I wouldn't say they're explicitly trying to target families, right? Like
yeah,
their content is I very much in the vein of rated E for everyone. Everyone can play and everyone can enjoy. But like probably very, very young children, like kids who are 5 or something, are, I don't know, they're probably going to be a little thrown off by like Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild.
right.
Um, Regardless, yeah, they're very much pivoting towards a specific demographic that does probably want something like this.
Yeah, and also a couple things that were not in the trailer. The Amico was going to be optimized for 2D games, so
Right.
there were eventually like demos of 3D games, but most of these are flat.
Mhm.
And Intellivision Entertainment claimed it had developed the world's most advanced 2D gaming chip with support for over 1 million sprites on a screen at once.
Interesting.
Um,
That was the thing I was going
and
to ask was what chip is in it.
Yeah, well, we sort of find out eventually, but
Mm.
this would support up to 8 wireless controllers in total. So they've had the two on top of the console. I don't know if they were planning to sell additional physical controllers, but also that they did show in that trailer how there was a like a smartphone app that could turn it into basically a controller. So that would be another option. And
Right.
they showed like a little like nub thing you put on top of your touchscreen to sort of simulate the circle pad, which is pretty cool. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a wild little idea too. They could probably just package the console with like a bunch of those since they're cheap to manufacture.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh no, I lost my nubs.
and well, I mean, hey, it's probably the easiest joystick to replace. on
Yeah.
top, on top of that, it's
Yeah,
also
my nub has drift.
on top of that, actually, something I'm curious about is, and I don't know if this is something you'll bring up later. Did they ever talk about how the actual streaming technology to the controllers was done?
Yeah, we get some technical details afterward, but not a lot,
Right.
unfortunately. Games for the Amico would be far more focused in scope than more popular consoles, like we talked about this, to sort of fit with this plan for family fun. The games would be required to be non-violent, so
Mm, okay.
no Resident Evil for the Amico, sadly.
Mm.
Also, the ESRB ratings had to be either E for everyone or E10 and up.
Right.
And the company also planned to port many of the original Intellivision games to the Amico, as well as licensed games from Atari's classic library. And also, they would not support in-app purchases or post-purchase downloadable content on this console. So no DLC, no like unlock magical coins for with mom's credit card.
Right.
Um, and each game was intended to cost between $2.99 and $7.99.
That's
So that
pretty
was kind
good.
of the range they were going for. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that as well because one of the things you often hear, and I don't necessarily blame like the companies that run these stores for this, but like a lot of the a lot of modern mobile games that you just kind of like give to children on iPads or whatever, like you hear these horror stories about like I don't know, some couple gave a 5-year-old an iPad and they downloaded a game and spent like $10,000 in it because they just don't understand what they're doing,
Yeah.
right? And it's like
Everyone buying Fortnite V-Bucks with the
right.
parent credit card.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, at the end of the day, the parents should be setting up parental controls on these devices and like limits and things to prevent this from happening, but also like using that as a selling point of like, hey, you can feel safe. This won't happen on this device. It's very obvious why they went that route.
Yeah. And Intellivision was aiming for a price tag between $150 and $180 for the finished console, with a projected release date of October 2020. And they were hoping to have developer kits done by 2019 so they could start making games. So pretty good so far. No major red flags. And a little bit after that, in May of 2019, we get kind of a big exclusive game for the Amico is announced, which is a new Earthworm Jim game.
What?
Yeah. So, for anyone who doesn't know, Earthworm Jim was a series of platforming games. The first one was in 1994, and I think the first two are pretty well liked. I've not played them myself. And then I believe there was a 3D one that was less popular, and then there was a Game Boy Color game in 1999, and that was also not popular. And then after that point, it kind of like languished. And then Atari announced at E3 2006 that a new game was in development for the PSP, the PlayStation Portable. At some point, that game was like quietly put on hold, and then it was canceled entirely. I think it was something to do with like royalty payments for license or something. I don't really know. So much later, there's this new game for the Amico announced. And kind of the interesting twist here, and probably why this happened, is the person who worked on the music for the first, at least the second Earthworm Jim game, was Tommy. So that probably
Oh.
helped this go along. So kind of a weird exclusive to have, but that is a game series people know about, and at least some people were interested in, because there were a lot of articles about this when it was announced.
Yeah, no.
Um,
Earthworm Jim's not something I've been familiar with, but it's got its fans.
so in April of 2020, pre-orders for the Intellivision Amico opened, which
Hmm.
required a $100 deposit that was refundable if you wanted to cancel. Intellivision quickly racked up over 10,000 pre-orders, and then also before that point, they had sold some, they called them Founders Edition units in January that were, I think, like late stage prototypes. I'm not really sure. They also tried to be cute there, and they sold 2,600 of the Founder Edition, so Atari 2600.
Oh, that's adorable. Yeah.
Yeah. Intellivision also said that major retailers had placed purchase orders for more than 100,000 units, but it was putting those on hold to sort of prioritize the direct orders because,
Hmm.
of course, COVID was starting.
Right.
Well, not starting. It was April, so manufacturing was already becoming an issue. And the console, even with COVID looming, it still had a release date of October 10th, 2020. By this point, Intellivision said the Amico had 50 games in development, which that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
And in April, they launched a campaign on Fig, which is sort of like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but it's for video games. And the idea is that you could back a project to get the video game and also receive like some sort of stock in the company. I don't know if it was like exactly stock, but it was that sort of concept. So that raised Intellivision another 7 million.
Yeah. I think famously also Psychonauts 2 was funded on Fig, if I remember correctly.
So the next month, in May of 2020, Intellivision gets a new global marketing director who is Jay Allard. He was a former Microsoft executive who was best known for working on the original Xbox and Xbox Live.
Disclaimer, I work there
Uh,
now. Anyways,
yes.
continue.
You're like, disclaimer, he's in the room next to me.
Disclaimer, I can drive over to him, but he doesn't know who I am.
So he came on in May of 2020, and he ended up leaving a few months later. He said, "quote No drama, just not a good fit." Quote.
Mm-hmm.
So all good. Now, however, there is an issue with this later on, where in March of 2021, so a little under a year after this, Intellivision was doing a presentation to investors or potential investors, and they were bragging that Jay Allard was involved in the company. Like they were like, "Guys, look at this catch we got. He worked on Xbox. Don't you want to invest in us?" Which is illegal. You can't do that.
Mm.
This caused the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission to send Intellivision a letter asking when exactly he had left the company.
Uh-huh.
So that's not good. And
Yeah, that does not sound that great. Now, quick question actually. You just said that there was a Figs thing was in 2020, right?
yes, that was in April 2020.
Yeah, and they were pitching to investors in 2021.
They sure were.
Uh-huh.
We're
So
we're
why
gonna
don't
get
you
to that.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's definitely interesting. I'm sure that's very normal and not weird.
That is normal. Fun fact, that same presentation also mentioned the vice president of global marketing, who was someone who previously worked at Mattel and had also left the company by that point. So just normal things in a presentation. Also, around this time, Tommy, who is now the CEO of Intellivision, is revealed to not be a very nice person. Who knew?
Really?
Yeah, really. He was a frequent poster on the Atari Age forums, which was primarily about like retro game console stuff, but then as the Intellivision Amico started to get attention. Like there were a lot of discussions about that there. Tommy would often get into fights with other forum users and
Right.
getting involved in threads about the Amico console. And there would be like threads where just like for days he's like replying back and forth to people on there. He would call critics, quote, mentally unstable folks, also cowards, usual know-it-all morons, communists, and most famously, gaming racists.
This is also what I call people when they tell me they don't like Overwatch. Uh, so you know
You
what? That's pretty.
communist, yeah.
Yeah, you gaming racist. Like, what do you have wrong against Torbjorn means? Like, that's not okay.
One post I liked where he was complaining about people on YouTube who were talking about the Amico. He said, quote, now hurry on back to your safe space, surrounded by your stuffed animals, so you can sling your arrows instead of standing up for yourselves and facing me. Quote.
He's talking about the Squishmallow girls there. Like, really going for him.
he's like, debate me, you cowards.
Yeah, I mean, look. This seems like a very upstanding, fine individual, you know? I don't
this
really...
is a normal
This is a normal
CEO.
human being who has went to therapy before. I don't really see the problem, but you know, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. What? Let's see if the later stuff changes my mind, right?
Yeah. Also, around this time, it's pointed out that Tommy was following some far right people on Twitter.
Okay. I'm gonna drop the ironic shtick now, just so people don't think I'm serious. Who was he following?
He was following Tommy Lauren from Fox News. He was following Ben Shapiro, Tim Pool, Steven Crowder, Jordan Peterson, and The Quartering on YouTube. And again, like, none of that should be surprising after he's just calling people communists for no reason. Like,
yeah, no, that's yeah. I mean, I'm not shocked. Like, I guess the gaming community has had these types of like gamers notoriously suck. like,
yes, yeah,
like notoriously gamers are not people. I'm not even gonna actually follow that up. Like notoriously, like gamers are not like human beings. Especially
right.
the ones that are online and like go to forums, like in the year of our Lord 2023, to like post about Atari, right? Those are the types of people you just generally don't want to interact with, actually. But he kind of sought them out, which is like step one of thing you shouldn't do, and then engage with them to get angrier. And like, you know, there's people in the gaming industry who have like done this before. At least like not to compare the two because like at least he made something good, but like Phil Fish is a pretty famous case. Phil Fish, the creator of Fez, pretty famously like just engaged with some like negative stuff that was said about Fez or something else. And then literally just quit, like canceled a sequel to Fez 2 because of some guy. Um and just quit making games altogether. This type of sort of like back and forth anger stuff is like I won't say commonplace, but not entirely unheard of. But yeah, Tommy seems to be continuously doing this type of thing.
Yeah, so we're gonna watch part of an interview from 2020 where Tommy compares criticism about the Amico's development to cancel culture.
Oh, yep, I've seen. Okay, yep.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen clips of this.
I think so.
But we're just gonna watch a couple minutes here. We're gonna stop at 19 minutes and 33 seconds. We're not watching 19 minutes of this.
Okay.
That's far too much Tommy for me. Hit play on 3, 2, 1, play.
No, it's good. I mean, that's what I've liked about watching you for the last 2 years.
I'm honest.
Extremely, extremely honest. Sometimes probably too much, but yeah.
yeah. For my sometimes not in a good way. Meaning people jump on me. You know, I might say something last year, and then something will change.
Exactly, yeah.
And then people say, "Oh, you're a liar." Well, no, I'm not a liar. I wasn't lying at the time. That's what we thought was happening. You know, so
I sometimes wonder, is it a generation thing as well? Because I'm like a little bit younger than you, but I, like yourself, I know I can read between the lines. I know when you're joking, when you're not.
Right.
I know that things change over time. And I think the problem is, for the last 2 years, you've really had the approach of showing the Amico, saying we're making this machine. And now for 2 years, we're now going to show you bit by bit how you construct a console, how you change things, how you change the controller. You may add things, you may take things away. We're going to show you the games from scratch. We're not going to show you them completely shiny. They're going to be in the early stages, like beta. And a lot of people don't seem to understand that.
They're very disconnected to that, aren't they? And again, my goal with doing it that way was twofold. One is I wanted to take people on a journey with me, like for the people who are interested, folks like yourself. And I thought, like, wouldn't it be cool? Because you never see that with hardware, right? It's always like, again, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X, what do we really know about it? Well, we kind of know what it looks like, and it has lots of terafloppings, and let's hope they don't teraflop. And the games look, like amazing and stuff, but we don't even know the price 2 months out from release, right? And so everyone's very, very secretive when it comes to that. And I'm like, you know what, let's do something a little different. So I wanted to take people on the journey with me, because we do see kind of this culture, like when you see on like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign, where it's like, hey, once they supported a game or a product, they start to give updates of the game being made. I know, like I've done 5 very successful Kickstarter projects for my music. And when we were making the albums, we're like, okay, here we are in Prague recording the string section, and here we are recording the choir, and here we are, and now we're at Skywalker Ranch mixing it. So people felt like they were a part of it from the beginning, watching this whole thing made, and then they get a final product kind of thing. So I always found that to be fun, and people really enjoyed that. So that's why I kind of looked at this project like that, say, you know what, no one's ever seen something being built from the beginning, and all the trials and tribulations and the things that need to be changed and fixed, and oh my gosh, now the price has to go up, all those things. Let me take those people along with me. So that was one reason. And then the second reason is to help build interest and grassroots, for certain people who are interested, which isn't costing us any advertising dollars at all. Look at the tens of thousands of people, Pete, that are following us. I mean, I can tell you our mailing list just over the last year has gone up by 30,000 people, right? And that's significant when it's just me talking about it for the most part, right? And, we put out interesting, funny videos sometimes, or interesting things, but we're not spending any advertising dollars. So again, if I was very secretive about everything, and I released the very first trailer about this like yesterday, because we're coming out in 8 months from now or 7 months from now, so let's release this first trailer. Imagine the last 2.5 years would have been erased, and all those thousands of videos that are out already on YouTube, all of the discussions, all of the excitement, all of that stuff wouldn't be there. So again, so those are the 2 main reasons why I did that. But you're right, though. I think it is a generational thing. I think, younger people, they the Twitter culture, if you will, or the cancel culture has put people on notice. Anything you say 5 years from now, you're going to get called out on. I think it's an awful thing that where, social media has become, specifically Twitter too. And, when you're anonymous on a message board or on YouTube, and you're anonymous, and, then you feel you can feel like I can say the nastiest things ever, because it has no repercussions for me. Forget the person who puts themselves out there and who takes all the risks and who wants to just bring something fun and new and unique and beautiful to the world to bring people together. Yeah, forget that guy. Screw him. I can be anonymous. And so let me just trash him. So there's that kind of weird mentality. And I do think it's a generational thing.
So the kids are doing too much cancel culture, and they're yelling at me on forums.
I mean...
And they won't give me their name, those cowards.
I'll give you my address, Tommy. Like you can fly up now to Seattle, Washington, where I'm sitting here waiting. Meet me at the Cap Hill Light Rail. We'll go at it. This guy is very egotistical and he thinks he could do it and he thought of it in his brain, so he just figured it would be real. But there's a billion different realities which come from translating a thing in your brain to a real project, especially if it's not software and or digital, right? Like if you have the limitations of like the physical world that you have to deal with, if you're very much in the head of like I am, I have this beautiful brand new idea to resurrect my childhood and give new children something to remember, like it's, you're not really thinking about these things. And when you're and if you're very easily like angered and the people whose money you took start getting a little mad, like you know,
Right.
it's probably not gonna go well for either of you, regardless of how correct or incorrect you are.
Yeah, and he's a little bit right that probably most of the people complaining about this online are not the target market, but if that's the case, then just ignore them, Tommy.
Yeah, and just to go back, because I totally forgot about the whole like cancel culture stuff, right? Like, like Tom, this is just very obvious, like him flailing, like
Yeah,
he's just angry about like people criticizing him. It's very like childish, immature stuff, right? But like if you actually like drill down into like why is he just suddenly talking about cancel culture or like, the gaming racists, when he starts talking about like that stuff, right? I mean, he's doing it because like he's mad people are criticizing him because he's not doing a perfect job, right? Like that is just basically it. Like people are
right.
criticizing him for very reasonable things like where's my video game console, Tommy? I gave you my money. Like things things like that. And he just starts getting like real mad and he just starts flailing around about cancel culture. It's cuz they're right. It's cuz they're correct. Like just blatantly.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people. I'm sure because he seemed just very online that I'm sure he came across some criticism that like didn't make sense. It was just people on Twitter saying dumb stuff. But like, yeah, you ignore those people, Tommy. And if there's
Yeah.
valid criticism, then maybe try to address that. But he doesn't do that part well either, as we find out later. Okay, so in August of 2020, we get the first delay. The release date is pushed back to
Yeah.
April 15th, 2021 to quote, overcome the myriad of obstacles and constraints imposed by the global pandemic, quote. Which is that's fair.
Yep.
Basically everyone did that. That's okay. You get one free pass here, Tommy.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I mean, the pandemic, like, famously, the pandemic started in China, which is where a lot of hardware manufacturing takes place. And for a couple months at the start, I think it was late February through almost June to July of 2020, many because China had what was it, a zero COVID policy, right, where they would not
Yeah.
tolerate a single case. They shut everything down. Total quarantine of like entire cities. Factories were closed for months on end, and this caused like a lot of manufacturing delays and constraints for a lot of things across the industry. Famously, the video game consoles that were launched later that year. The I think it's the eighth generation we're in now, or ninth. I think we're in the ninth gen now. Jesus, I think we're in the ninth gen now. But like the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S launched in late 2020, and famously, they had supply constraints for quite a while, almost all the way up until basically this year. It was
Yeah.
almost impossible to find one in a store. Like that was because of that manufacturing constraint. Various other things such as the analog pocket, which was one of my favorite gaming devices, had problems, shipping due to that. I think it was delayed for a bit. And even more famously, a thing which almost never got delayed, ever, the iPhone got delayed for an entire month for the first time ever. It shipped in October instead of September that year. Like it had ramifications.
Yeah, it was definitely like big moment for realizing how interconnected manufacturing feels when like one part is missing.
Exactly.
Yeah, so Tommy gets a break. That one's fine. You can have one delay. But in February of 2021, which would be 2 months before that delay, or 2 months before the new release date, it gets pushed back again to October 10th of 2021. And again, they cited supply chain problems. In April of 2021, Intellivision asked for more money from investors in another crowdfunding campaign, this time on the site Republic, which I don't believe is around anymore. I think they got bought by something else. But the campaign page claimed the Amico had $25 million in pre-orders by this point, and over 100,000 units pre-sold to customers and retailers. And that campaign raised $11 million for the company from a total of 9,411 investors, which was very not close to their goal of 50 million. And again, this is the second or third time they're raising money publicly while also having the money from the refundable pre-orders.
Tommy wants money.
Tommy wants more money.
Tommy wants money. Yeah. So where'd that money go?
I know one of the like very obvious money wasters throughout this. Intellivision had multiple offices worldwide, and like they even did like videos where they had like these like massive offices. They had offices in Salt Lake City, Utah, Irvine, California, Dubai, and Nuremberg, Germany. So I don't know why you need that kind of an operation for this before you ship anything, but
Well,
they did.
He's just front running the legal issues with the Nuremberg office. You know, he's getting ready. He needs to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It seems like, you know, Tommy's a big return to office supporter, and it seems to have paid off really well for him.
So then in June of 2021, some information from the developer portal for the Amico was leaked, and Ars Technica did a good write-up of it. This provided the first clues about the console's actual hardware and performance, because again, before this point, we were just getting like marketing materials, some of which was like photoshopped.
Right.
This is when we find out the console is using Qualcomm's Smart Display 200 platform. So this is a chip made for smart displays, which don't really play games, that had a Snapdragon 624 chipset, 16 gigabytes of flash storage, and 2 gigabytes of RAM. And Intellivision's documentation mentioned the ZTE ZMax Pro Z981 as a good performance benchmark when testing Amico software, which is a $100 budget phone from 2016.
Okay.
So this is not again, they did say earlier this was mostly 2D games, so it's probably fine, but
I'd say it's kind of a red flag that it's like a smart display chip, but depending on the actual like how much they're going to sell it for, it doesn't seem crazy. Which, did they even announce that yet, or is that like unreleased?
Yeah, before they said they were targeting like maybe $180. So that is more than the $100 budget phone from several years prior.
Yeah, so never mind then. That seems like it's not great. Like, I get you're not throwing a great, you know, CPU in there, but you could probably afford to put in like an old Snapdragon inside, you know?
Or like if nothing else, then like something to make the menus load faster or something, because that's like, gonna get a little laggy.
Yeah, it's gonna not be great, especially when you're trying to sell this thing that like it's going to go on for years. You might not want it to be like the most cutting edge game graphics possible, right? But I would assume that like you might want an over the air update 5 years down the line to be like, hey, this outputs to like 4K or whatever, you know?
Right.
Like just something like that to future proof it.
Yeah, and we also get some technical details about the controllers. They are using 240 megahertz system on a chips designs. So they are very, very low end. And the actual games that would run on this, which I believe how this worked was like the part on the screen could either be like controls or a dedicated game. That like entire content, including like whatever images needed to be on there, could not exceed 1 MB.
So, wait, let me get this right because I might be a little confused. My assumption when I saw the screens, and this is because this is how the Wii U famously works, is that for the Wii U, for those who don't know, was Nintendo's failed successor to the Wii, but it had a giant touchscreen tablet which was included with the device called the gamepad, very much like a proto Nintendo Switch, except famously nothing actually ran on it.
Right.
It could not work when it was in any relative proximity away from the system itself because the Wii U box that was under the television actually did all the processing for the visuals on the gamepad and wirelessly streamed those visuals to the gamepad. When I saw the Amico for the first time, my assumption was that that is how the touchscreens on the controllers would work. Is that not the case?
No, it's not
Oh,
streaming from the console. It's like
oh my
there's sort of
God.
like independent apps that get like loaded onto it, and then they're communicating
No.
with the console. Yeah, it's not good. It's
No. Why would
not
you
doing
do
it right.
that? That seems like a horrific idea.
That kind of thing would make like those like fully independent games work. Like theoretically, you could shut off the console and then keep playing something, but like you're not going to get a lot in
Uh,
1 MB.
right. I also don't understand the sort of like I don't really see the point to stressing that as a feature, you know? Like, if your selling point is we're bringing families together, your mom and your dad, they constantly shout in the other room, they're coming back together, child, if you just get an Amico. Like, that whole thing very much is almost antithetical to the whole, well, you can just kind of play a video game by yourself when the TV is not
Yeah.
being used. Like, it just seems like it's very much like hey, our point is that there's not all this modern Marxism stuff to make your video games bad. I don't understand why suddenly the whole entire design of the system is around the architecture that I don't know, maybe someone wants to play Snake on it when when the TV's off or in their bedroom. Like I think these kids have iPads, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to get into your mind when you're building a system like this that these children have iPads, they have Fire tablets, they have very cheap little things that basically allow them to watch Bluey, and those things can play whatever off-screen game you're thinking of a lot better than like this. And it just seems like they absolutely got the design wrong.
Yeah. Those iPads have Minecraft on them, Tommy. You're competing with Minecraft.
Yeah, and it's true, the greatest video game of all time.
So, when Ars Technica reported on the leak, Tommy threatened legal action in a series of posts on Twitter. He said, quote, Ars Technica journalist in quotes, just illegally posted a bunch of confidential information about Intellivision in his ridiculous misinformed article. This private info had not for public use in caps and confidential caps all over it. Unfortunately, legal action will need to be taken. Same genius who thinks using stock photos is against the law. Quote. And that part was in reference to Intellivision using Photoshop stock images in their promotional material, which I guess Ars Technica also covered at some point. So those tweets were deleted pretty soon after, and Tommy eventually apologized. So that's good.
Oh, he actually apologized for that?
He apologized.
I did not expect that of him. That's actually kind of like shocking to me. It's just very much like I'm mad this leaked.
Yeah.
That is not a whole hey, this is like bad information.
Yeah, like he was not disproving anything in the article. He was just mad that it was discovered. The incidents keep coming. In November of 2021, the Intellivision game Tank Battle that was in development for the Amico was revealed to be using models and artwork copied from the World of Tanks mobile game and various stock images. Intellivision responded by taking the demo video down for Tank Battle, then uploading it again, and then deleting that one and uploading again for a third time. The third video upload added a disclaimer that the game was a work in progress and using placeholder graphics. And then around the same time, there was a video. I think it was like a demo unit somewhere in a store or something that was running one of the other Amico games, Moon Patrol, which was just using text copied and pasted directly from Nintendo's Star Fox game.
Hey, you know what? Star Fox rocks. Great thing to like illegally steal from.
Yep, not great, and also a lot of the games at this point are sort of revealed to be like ports of mobile games, which again, like for what they're going for, like that's not the worst idea, but it's less exciting. The Intellivision Amico was delayed again to December 2021, and then it was delayed again to sometime in 2022. In January 2022, Intellivision once again got mad at Ars Technica over an article outlining how the Amico had still not shipped. Basically, the article is just like summing up a lot of the things I've said, like they're having weird like marketing stuff, and Tommy's being weird online. And the official Intellivision account on Twitter published a statement of facts on its website and Twitter account in response to the article, which is really bizarre. The statement had a few points, like they refuted a couple things in the article that were like kind of valid. For example, Ars Technica had said that the Amico had a profit margin of over 100%, and they were basing that on the leaked parts from that, like the specifications. Like they were like, this chip costs this amount from Qualcomm, and so on. And Intellivision said in their statement that that was never true, and that the hardware costs had increased due to COVID-related chip shortages, which might be true. That sounds plausible. That article also called some of the demonstrated games unfinished. Intellivision said they were in fact finished, and some of them had official ratings. But again, like, finished is sort of in quotes here because you can't play them because the console's not out yet. So that was kind of a weird thing that happened. My favorite part of that was in the Twitter reply, someone had had a screenshot of a drill tweet, and the tweet was, "And another thing, I'm not mad. Please don't put in the newspaper that I got mad."
The Nostradamus of our time. I like it when he keeps getting mad, like a just his face gets all red like he's a Looney Tune. It's very funny, honestly. You know, just like seeing all this kind of go down. It's very enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, and in February of 2022, which was a month after that, Tommy stepped down as CEO of Intellivision, but remained on the board as president and the largest shareholder. That same month, Intellivision started another round of funding because they're running out of money because they haven't shipped a console yet.
Yeah, afterwards, they hired Linda Yaccarino in order to be the CEO of Intellivision. She seems to know her stuff, actually, and probably, you know, steer the ship properly. Disclaimer, this is a joke. That didn't happen. But, yeah, like, so how'd that money situation resolve?
They were hoping to raise another 10 million here, which would allow them to continue functioning for 7 to 9 months. And they were hoping in that time they would ship a console and they could actually start, you know, having a product to sell that would make money. That page included an SEC filing that said the company had 1.2 million in short-term debt and an additional 7.2 million in long-term debt. And a lot of that was gaining interest because Intellivision had zero revenue and couldn't pay any of it back yet.
Right.
And that funding campaign ended early after only raising $58,000 from 54 investors.
Turns out, you know, you should have been a little bit nicer to all those gaming racists, Tommy. Those are the people who, you know, really want to give Tommy his money.
So in April of 2022, Intellivision started cutting staff and licensing some intellectual property, and they were still hoping to ship the Amico console sometime in 2022. In June of that year, Intellivision said the test production run, quote, should be completed in the next few weeks, quote. In November of 2022, the company said 25 consoles and 50 controllers were in final production. That same month, H-Bomber Guy on YouTube published a 2-hour-long video called Roblox Oof.mp3, which explored the origin of Roblox's oof sound and how it was owned by Tommy. And it also talked a lot about the Intellivision product.
Disclosure, I'm a patron. I'm a patron of H-Bomber Guy.
And that put even more attention on Intellivision and how the Amico had still not shipped. In January of 2023, the company said final tests of production hardware were going well. Again, they'd said that a year ago.
I'm glad things are going well. It's like if my manager checked up on me asking me how things are going after 4 months of a project not being delivered, and I'm like, it's coming along.
Yeah. And then in April of 2023, Intellivision CEO Phil Adams said, quote, "We have been working on finishing the console firmware and content. I plan to come out with a more complete update after the current round of discussions and release some video showing where we stand," quote. In May of 2023, so a month after that statement, Intellivision reorganized as it remained very low on funds and still didn't have a console to sell to anyone. This is when the company started licensing its intellectual property to other companies to create games for other platforms. So their hope is like some short-term revenue based on the IP that we bought already and are just kind of sitting on. Again, like they don't have a lot at this point, but yeah. And then also they announced that they were going to bring some of its games to mobile devices under the name Amico Home. And they also said that, quote, "Shipping a console remains a part of our product strategy," quote. But notably, there is still no shipping date for the Amico, and it's unclear if they ship a console, is it going to be the Amico or something else? Don't really know. They're being pretty vague. In August of 2023, Bonus Stage Publishing released the game Gravitators on Steam, which was originally intended to be an Amico exclusive game. So some of the games that were being made for this console are now like being ported to other platforms because the Amico is not happening. And then in September of 2023, two games created for the Amico, Astro Smash and Shark Shark, were listed on Steam, Xbox, and the Switch digital stores. Shark Shark is the one that got like demonstrated the most for the Amico. In most of the marketing material we get, they're playing this game. This is a game made for a console that was supposed to be released 3 years prior to this, and it was mostly the only game they showed this whole time. And it's like a 2D game where like you're a fish and you're trying to avoid a shark.
I would like to point out quickly, actually, the gameplay itself is 2D, but the game itself seems to actually utilize 3D models. I don't know if I'm wrong with that, but
yeah, it does.
Okay.
These games were published by the German-based game developer BBG Entertainment, which acquired the full rights to these from Intellivision in May. So this is one of the games that Intellivision like quickly sold the IP for to get some revenue. What's funny is that these games are still advertised as having music composed by Tommy, even though at least Shark Shark was discovered to be using stock music. So that's cool. Intellivision is still taking reservations for the Amico, which at one point required a deposit, but that's now $0. They're not taking anyone's money for that. They are still selling a collector's edition bundle of physical Amico games in case you want games for a console that doesn't exist. There's a 4-pack for $80 or an 8-pack for $150.
Now, Corbin, I have a question for you. I'm not sure if you know the answer, but I do. Isn't the console a digital-only console? How are they selling physical games for them?
They're not like really the cartridges or something like that. Yeah. They're just like they just look cool.
I think they're literally like NFC tags.
Yeah, they have like the code for the game, but they don't like physically go into the console or anything.
Yeah. Whoops.
Yeah, you can still buy those. That's the thing. And there have been no updates from Intellivision from that statement in May of 2023. We're recording this at the end of September of 2023. And also that statement wasn't even like shared on their social media platforms. If you go pull up their Twitter, their Instagram, the posts are from, I think like, I don't even know if they had one from 2022, but those have not been touched in a while. The company looks dead from the outside. I don't like doing episodes about ongoing situations, but this is one where it does not seem to be ongoing. I think there's like a 99% chance that the Amico does not ship. I don't think it's going to be real. I don't know what's going to happen to Tommy also hasn't said anything online in quite a while.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Very public, very not great failure. And but I think again with any other person in any other company, I feel like it sucks. You haha, you make fun of it, but like I'd say what is it? The thing that this reminds me the most of in the gaming world, I would say is, and it's not a good thing to be reminded that I'm reminded of the Ouya, but it's the Ouya. So what I mean, it's a very similar story that ended in a very similar way, right? So like, what was the Ouya? The Ouya was a small $100 box that ran Android, and the idea was that essentially it was going to be a very, very, very indie friendly platform that allowed games to be kind of on the TV. I think their whole goal was basically be like a little, how there's all those small little PC games on like itch.io or Steam. Like they wanted to be a box that allowed you to play those on your television. And they had a lot of grand ideas about like, that all games should have a demo and they all should cost like a certain amount of money and they shouldn't have DLC. A lot of it's very similar. Like a lot of it sounds very similar. It had a controller that was really terrible and everything, right? And it had like, people from the gaming industry who piled onto it. Unlike the Amico, so far, it actually did become a physical product that was released. And it did have some games, and it turned out to be a failure. And I think the company dissolved. At least they don't exist anymore in their previous state, and they're no longer making it. But I think no one is really like I don't know. I don't think anyone was explicitly rooting for the failure of the Ouya, right? Like it was a huge Kickstarter thing, its failure and the fact that it didn't really turn out the way people wanted and its bad reception was just kind of their own fault, but it was kind of it had a Cat video or whatever, and then people just kind of laughed at it for a couple weeks and went on with their lives. Like it wasn't a continuous like thing. And I think that's entirely Tommy's fault. Because when you just become this public antagonistic figure towards the people who like want to support you, like it's just this is what's going to happen. Like you're never going to be able to regain their trust. Like you can't really work in this industry to like sell a consumer product again. Right? Like what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I wouldn't want to dogpile on a company trying to ship number one a console, which is a very very difficult market to break into.
Very.
And number two, trying to ship hardware during COVID.
Oh
So
God.
a lot of factors stacked against this. But again, we have this like really weird terminally online dude at the forefront of this who just every time there was the slightest issue with this console in the public sphere just immediately like attacked them like someone at Ars Technica just reporting on a website that was accidentally marked as public and you like threatened to sue them. That's not what you do as a CEO of a company. That's crazy.
Yeah,
And like
exactly.
stuff like that just kept happening over and over and over again. So feels bad. I think some people didn't get their like refunds on this or had issues getting them. Obviously, really bad for a lot of the developers who spent time and money and energy on games for this. I think Intellivision had some kind of like agreement where they would pay upfront for like some of the game's development. I don't think that really ever happened. So
No.
then we got into the like with Gravitators where they had to sort of pivot and turn it into a game for something else.
Mm-hmm.
So not great.
Nope.
And Tommy bad.
Tommy bad. Tommy sad. Tommy mad. I don't know. Like it's a sad story. Just kind of like cements kind of the because I would love to see more challenges in the video game industry. I love weird consoles. I love wacky ideas. I always root for these guys to succeed. When they're trying something new and fun and cool. I loved the famously. I love the systems that um die even before they do. I was a big fan of the Wii U, and I loved my Vita and I loved all these little failures but I'd say if you're looking for I don't know I like if it's funny because it's not even like all loss, right? Like this doesn't always happen. Say like see the Playdate for like a great example of like how to kind of do a similar idea, but do it in a way that's great and good and people like it, you know? It's like
Right.
there's still you can still break into the gaming space with like a small niche little device that plays a subset of retro games that, you know, from your childhood and allows for kind of developer creativity. So I hope this type of story doesn't make people like look at this and go, well, gee, that sure sucks. It's gonna be Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo forever, and we should never try. Cause like you should.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the Amico. Evan, would you like to plug anything as we get out of here?
Yeah, no, I don't really. I'm not a poster anymore. Because of certain scenarios that might have happened with big websites I liked. But I do have a blog where I write significantly worse than Corbin, but I do write. It is at my. It's at a website evan.exposed. You can follow it in your favorite RSS reader and or on ActivityPub because it actually is syndicates there, which is really weird, and I don't want to think about it. But I will every once in a while. I'll write posts about things there, so feel free to follow me and email me angrily. Especially if you're Tommy Tallarico, in which that offer I talked about was real. Meet me in the Cap Hill light rail.
Yes, go read Evan's blog and go fight Evan in person.
Yeah, I mean I'll lose. I'm lifting. I'm trying. Like I'm trying to get some upper body strength. Okay, disclaimer. Tommy, this is a joke. please do not please do not come to Seattle to fight me. I'm I'm totally serious. But do go to therapy. You have the money.
Yeah. Unlike Evan, TechTales is on Twitter at TechTales Show. And also unlike Evan, TechTales is on Mastodon at
Okay.
TechTales at mas.to. The links for those are in the show notes. Also in the show notes are all of the sources. We cite our sources here at TechTales.
Yeah.
And also the links to the videos. And that's it. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back in your podcast feed soon. Bye bye.
All right. Bye. Forgot I'm supposed to say that.